I'm Joanna Abeyie, the founder and managing director of Blue Moon, which is a diversity, inclusion, equity, consultancy, business and executive search service. The work I do at Blue Moon is essentially going into organisations and helping them to change their culture. So yes, largely around cultural transformation to make sure that all individuals, all talent within an organisation has the equity they need to have what they need to be successful. So I review attraction strategies, recruitment processes, retention and people culture, and promotion and development processes to make sure that they are inclusive. In terms of the executive search piece, businesses usually come to us if they're looking for diverse leaders, so people that they haven't been able to get access to that are from a really broad range of backgrounds. So that could be individuals who identify as having a disability, to somebody who's an ethnic minority, to somebody of differing faith. So, you know, it's just making sure that we widen the talent pool.
What led you to do that kind of job?
So I, as a child, wanted to be a journalist, and I always laugh at this because I used to love watching Michael Parkinson with my mum on Friday nights, and I used to sort of become fascinated in the interviews that he would do with people like, you know, like Muhammad Ali or Bette Midler or, you know, Meg Ryan. I didn't really realise that that was journalism. I just thought that there was this smart man that gets to interview all these inspiring people. So when I got to about 16 and I was studying for my A-levels, I went and spoke to a careers advisor and asked, you know, what should I do? After my A-levels I have to go on to university, but after university I probably have to find a job quite quickly because I wasn't from a family where we had lots of money, so I had sort of time to sit around and wonder what I'm going to do. I had to be quite proactive in having something straight afterwards. And so she asked me to think about what I liked, and I couldn't think of things that were a job, but I did love reading magazines. I loved Michael Parkinson and that sort of thing. But I didn't want to be famous. I didn't want anyone to know who I was. I didn't want to have to be on screen or anything like that. So she suggested journalism. So I went off and started to do some work experience. I say that as if it was easy. It really wasn't easy. It was lots of rejections. It was, I mean, like 70 odd rejections. It was sort of going without lunch every time I did work experience, walking to my work experience because I couldn't afford to travel there. It wasn't an easy journey, an easy experience getting that experience. So that was the first thing that I noticed. And then when I got into organisations and was doing work experience, there were very few people that were sort of poor. It's not a great way to describe anyone, but it's how I describe myself. So yeah, there wasn't people from low socioeconomic backgrounds. There weren't people from a broad range of ethnicities that I could see. There certainly wasn't anyone with a visible disability. So it felt very much like an elite environment. So an environment where it felt like you had to come from a particular university or a particular class background. And that bothered me, that challenged me. So I set up my first organisation, Shine Media, in 2008. And the aim was to make sure that other young people like myself, at the time I was only 19, I'm 33 now, so it was really to make sure that there were other people that were like me that could get access to the industry. At the same time I was still working as a journalist, and I was doing work experience, and I was getting internships and things like that while I was at university, and set up the charity at the same time, and realised that over like 8 years I placed probably about 3,000 people into work while still being a full-time journalist.
What do you think about the intersection? We're talking about intersectionality. What do you think about the intersection of being disabled and black? Does that have any impact on your life?
Absolutely. So I identify as mixed heritage. So my mum is white and from Britain, and my dad is black and from West Africa, Ghana. So that already had, growing up, you have your complex sort of identity issues anyway. So it's interesting in that respect when you think about intersectionality, because I'm brown, so I fit into how people would describe me as black, but actually when I'm with my sort of the black side of my family, they very much treat me as if I'm white. And my mum is white, and I'm brown, so it's interesting how they perceive me. So I think there's that challenge there where you kind of don't quite fit in each place, because of course when I'm with my mum's family, they certainly wouldn't describe me as white. No one really talks about it. My dad and my mum's family don't really talk about the fact that I'm mixed, but it's not until and that's probably protected me in a way. It's not until you go into other environments that you realise culturally that you're seen quite differently. And then if you add to that some of the other things that I live with, so anxiety and chronic depression, it's difficult. I think in the British culture, I think it's not necessarily a topic that's spoken about, but it's certainly spoken about a bit more culturally than it is certainly within my father's West African culture. Sort of even when you sort of discuss things around medication, you know, for things like chronic depression or anxiety, certainly from my dad's perspective, it's not an ideal route to go down, and there's other ways to deal with it. And so that can be a challenge. So I think it's sort of seen as, are you sure you're depressed and you're not just having a bad day, or you're not just a bit worried about something, you're not just anxious about something in particular, as opposed to this being a sort of a long-term illness that you're having to sort of live with. So it's challenging because I think therefore there is a stigma that is still attached to discussing mental health and well-being within that culture, and then you're kind of at conflict because in some environments it's okay to discuss, and then in other environments and it's not so okay to discuss. And I think generally from what I've seen, like even from my dad's side of the family, there are lots of people that obviously have challenges with their well-being, but I think culturally, because it's not discussed or there's not been a space in which they can be open about it, it goes overlooked, it goes untreated. And what I mean by untreated, not necessarily by medication, but even through sort of holistic things, or things like going for a walk or things like that.
What does Black History Month mean to you then?
So Black History Month for me is an important month. It's an important month because it does focus for the whole of October lots of activity around the contributions that Black people have made. I think when we think about history within the national curriculum, it's not just Black history, but there is other history that we just don't hear about. And unless you're sort of a proactive self-educator that goes off and reads, you just totally miss out on all of the different cultures that have contributed to how we are, how we've got here today globally, but also within your own location. And so for me, it's a great month in order for us to kind of talk about those things. What is a shame though, is that we haven't been able to, in 2020, embed a more diverse history into the curriculum. So not just that of Black history, but also of Asian, of Southeast Asian, of things that have gone on in places like Russia. I think there is so many other things that have gone on that we don't necessarily cover. And I understand that we're in Britain, and so British history is important, but I think who makes up Britain is so different, and who has contributed to Britain is so diverse. So I don't know that there is that when we talk about history, we should just be talking about the history of individuals who are white, when there is a history that has been contributed to by so many different ethnicities and cultures. So Black History Month is a good month to celebrate things, but it's also a bit bittersweet in some ways, because I think I just wish it was much more integrated throughout the year.